So the title of my speech is Healthy and Sustainable Homes, and I decided on this after visiting COF institution in Hesperia, where they're building earth-based structures, and they call them super adobe earth-based structures, and the definition for that would be consisting of earth on-site and other decomposable materials for stabilization. And I formed that definition after my visit. And so my four claims would be that they are ecological, economical, safe, therefore socially acceptable, and the use in the U.S. and other countries has been successful. It is important that they are economically that they're economical, because the cost of living is going up according to the USHUD, which is the United States Housing and Urban Development Department, and so the rent and transportation costs are going up, and utilities and upkeep are going up as well, because the houses that we live in currently are unsustainable. And so the time to build one of these earth-based housing is very short compared to a regular house. It's weeks instead of months. So therefore it's cheaper, and so it requires less labor costs or no labor costs, because you can build it yourself because it's pretty simple. And therefore, since it's cheap, the mortgage is low, and they're ecological. They're built on the quote that less is better. Earth is the primary material, so therefore they are sustainable. And for cooling and heating, cooling can be done with a wind tunnel chimney that faces toward the direction of clean air or wind in the summer, and that can cool the house in a matter of minutes, like probably 2 minutes or seconds, depending on how big the house is. And radiant floor heating would heat the house, and a fireplace could be added, but it might not be necessary. And they are safe, especially for emergencies. They can be built really quickly after a natural disaster that destroys other houses, regular houses, and because they don't have many edges to them, and they're rounded, the wind doesn't get caught on anything, and they can withstand earthquakes more than the California standard needs. And they basically, when they were testing it, it broke the machine. Also, they're healthy because they don't have chemicals that are usually used in regular housing. And the mold and mildew is reduced, and allergens is reduced, which can cause asthma and other diseases. So the use in the U.S. and other countries has been successful, and according to COF, and so because it can provide low income and affordable housing, quick and emergency housing, they're safe and easy to maintain, and they're environmentally friendly and sustainable. And to conclude, earth-based structures are sustainable, long-lasting, cheap to build, maintain. They have no health concerns because they lack harmful chemicals when you build them, and they are less of an impact on planet Earth, and planet Earth will be able to regenerate as a result, and it's Earth Week.
All right. Well, you identify the topic and you have a title for your presentation, but it doesn't sound like a claim, so I was waiting for the propositional claim to show up. It never does. What you then present is a series of secondary claims. They're all claims. They're stated in the form of declarative sentences. And if I had to put all those things together to come up with a proposition, I could do so, but I shouldn't have to do that work. It should be relatively clear at the beginning of the speech what your end game is going to be. I did think that you laid out the secondary points pretty clearly, and like I said, you followed them reasonably well. You signposted in the body of the speech adequately. On some of the points, I think you need a lot more explanation. For instance, the question of affordability becomes an issue. What size homes are we talking about? Who's likely to be living in these circumstances? I think you need a lot more definition of what you are talking about, because it sounds like you're talking about people making mud huts and living in them, and that probably is not what you're describing, but I don't have enough of a background or definition of what the earth-based home means, except that its materials made up of the earth, and that's the image that I'm getting in my head. So when we talked about language issues, and remember I talked about everybody creates a referent in their head, I'm thinking about, okay, well, adobe bricks. I'm thinking, California in 1750 and people building homes out of that kind of stuff. I'm thinking of mud huts that you see in Africa. What exactly are you talking about? I think you need to have a clear definition and description of what's going on there. I'm not quite sure what you mean by sustainability, except that I guess that means that we're not cutting down trees, or we're not generating steel, or we're not using up natural resources, as opposed to the houses themselves are sustainable, but it's really that the materials are sustainable in some way. That's another thing that I think needs to be clarified here. How big an impact construction materials make on the environment is never quantified. That would be something else that would tell us that this would be an important thing. So for instance, if half of our natural resources go to construction of new homes, and we could be sustainable if 1/5 of those homes were the earthen kind of homes that you're talking about, then I could see that there's going to be some sustainability issue. I'm not sure whether or not that's the case. I have no numbers on this, so it's, like I said, I think that that's a little bit problematic. Let's see. You talk about some general things like the time frame is short, you could do it yourself, and I'm sitting here going, if I built myself an earth-based home, I would die. I'm sure that it's one of those things where there's probably a system to it, there's probably a set of plans, there's a way to do it, but I don't know exactly what it is you're talking about. And this goes back to the beginning of the argument, kind of trying to define this issue a little bit more. It doesn't mean that it's probably useful to have these homes here in California because it doesn't rain that much, but I'm thinking if I owned one of these homes in Oregon, I'd be screwed because it would be washing away. And that's just, like I said, that's just a visualization I'm getting, and I'm sure that that's not what happens, but there's just, it needs a lot more clarification. You see what I'm talking about?
I couldn't just bring in a picture.
Yeah.
That really solved everything. I probably forgot to mention that they can be Americanized and stuff. So, therefore they can have, garages and stuff.
Well, like you did talk about the cooling and heating thing, and I said, okay, well that sounds like it would certainly reduce costs and make it affordable and that sort of thing, but when you're talking about people living in a house that's made out of earth, the image that most people are going to have is not the image that you probably are thinking of, and there has to be some kind of description of what's going on there. All right. Sorry I went off on that. It just